You're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you about the woke method as it applies to public schools. This comes from zerohedge.com. Schools openly preach that if one feels offended, then one has been offended. Preach is the operative word. In the Urban Dictionary, the definition of preach has no single meaning, but is used to convey a casual sense of affirmation, acknowledgement, said in agreement, something that is real, absolute, well said, a person dropping mad knowledge, whatever that means, or to indicate that something has impressed you favorably. Its usage among young blacks has been parodied ad nauseum among clueless suburban whites. For example, if a student or colleague claims to have been offended by your words or actions, it does not matter if you intended no offense. More troubling is the fact that it does not matter if your words and actions were the type no rational person should find offensive, you are still the offender, merely by virtue of the fact that someone claims to have been offended. Any student group that resists woke orthodoxy is likely to be forcibly disbanded or prevented from forming student clubs. Student clubs cannot form without faculty sponsors. Since the vast majority of the faculty at these schools are woke, or at least too afraid to be seen as non-woke, conservative students have trouble officially meeting and inviting speakers. If a non-woke speaker is invited, the wokes mobilize to deny them a platform, and they feel righteous for doing so. You starting to get the idea? Being woke is the new arrogancy on steroids. Opposing woke slogans or voicing contrary slogans is not tolerated. Why? Well, because opposing wokeness is thought to be motivated by hate. Voicing opposition to woke slogans is tantamount to hate speech. A student who challenges a woke slogan is bullied and harassed by the woke majority. Meanwhile, woke slogans and images are hung in school buildings, and you can't take them down. White or Western students are told not to participate in cultural traditions of non-white or non-Western people groups. The oppressors cannot participate in the culture of the oppressed. For example, several white students who wore shirts with African designs were reprimanded and forced to change clothes. The fact that the shirts were a gift from their teacher, a black African man, made no difference, and that the students wore the shirts to show affection for said teacher, to honor his gift, was still a cultural approbation. In another instance, a musician was reprimanded for blending a Western and non-Western musical style into a new artistic expression. The musician was accused of cultural imperialism. People lay awake at night coming up with this stuff. They work hard. All this behavior, all this attitude used to be viewed as arrogance. Today, it runs the schools and sadly the media. Why? Because the social minority is in charge. And that's called progress. But the reality here is that children are running the schools. Shakespeare, Homer, and other canonical authors are being eliminated from the curriculum. In some cases, schools and teachers boast about canceling these patriarchal racists. Even at schools that do not officially cancel canonical Western texts, the texts are subtly replaced in the name of anti-racism. Ad hominem attacks are presented as the cornerstone of critical thinking rather than as a fallacious form of argumentation. We're teaching students to evaluate texts and arguments by primarily attending to the author's race, gender, and sexuality. Students attend mandatory training sessions in which experts teach them how to identify and report microaggressions. And since to a student with a hammer everything looks like a nail, the students begin informing on one another and on their teachers. White teachers are told to attend racial political re-education workshops in which they strive to overcome their whiteness in the classroom. It's long been accepted that whiteness is a meaningful category. Reject this idea and you're accused of having white fragility. Before introducing a new unit, teachers compile lists of trigger warnings of the material in the unit. A trigger warning serves to alert students to any and all things in the unit that might cause them stress, frustration, anger, or sadness. These lists are shared with the students so they can learn just what it is they can complain about. The side effect of the whole woke attack on tradition, authority, and hierarchy has been the revocation of dress codes. Arguably, the only rule left in the dining halls and cafeterias is don't throw food. Many students eat meals with headphones in their ears while watching videos on their phones. The less respectful students don't even bother with the headphones. Sir and madam have long disappeared as to authoritarian and gendered. The terms master and headmaster cannot be used, as master might connote slavery. Exams are being eliminated for two reasons. One, because exams are apparently inherent racist, sexist, classist, heteronormative, and otherwise unfair. And secondly, because exams cause students stress. And stress makes students feel bad. And feeling bad negatively impacts their well-being. Additionally, some students do poorly on exams, and this has the potential to result in a situation that's inequitable. Faculty are frequently pressured to identify their pronouns. How do you intend to use this pronoun, that pronoun? Failure to identify one's pronouns is seen as transphobic or ciscentric, or both. Students, however, can reassign their own pronouns at will, and if a teacher mistakenly does not use the student's preferred pronoun, the teacher is accused of misgendering, and misgendering is a serious offense. It's even a kind of violence. Pronoun functions grammatically as a noun phrase. They are descriptive. They're not personal. All of this stuff is considered woke. The unchecked advance of wokeness will do two things to your school. First, you and your students will lose the ability to freely read, write, and speak as pupils and teachers. Secondly, the education that you now provide will become unrecognizably impoverished. That second effect is probably the hardest to believe, especially if you are in a top academic institution. But it is the effect of which that is most certain. In place of free-thinking young scholars, you will begin turning out a generation of woke activists who believe that feelings matter more than facts, that perception is reality, and that it is more important to judge a text than to understand it. Oh, and judging means anachronistically, interpreting the author's words in light of the most recent woke orthodoxy. That's what the education department is up against. That's what your children are up against. And if you happen to teach in a private school, that's what you're going to be up against. Welcome to the 21st century.